Hello everyone, you're watching the channel Stories of Our Life. Friends, make yourselves comfortable. I wish you to truly enjoy listening to this life story.
The life of every city is divided into two parts. During the day its streets and squares are buzzing with human activity, but at night everything comes to a standstill and quite different laws come into play. This algorithm is the same for metropolises and quiet provincial towns like Santa Clara. On that autumn night, Mr. Wilson and his company were not concerned with people's thinking. They, who had hit rock bottom, were concerned with current problems. When the streets of the town were teeming with daytime life, they tried to make a little money, so that they could spend the evening in pleasant conversation and forget their humble existence for a while. Mr. Wilson had made a home for himself under the bridge as early as last spring. His friends were frankly jealous of him and considered it an honor to visit the leader of the local homeless. The owner of the luxury lodgings himself did not bother looking for a drink. He gave his comrades an opportunity to sit quietly and warm up. His apartment had a heater found in some dumpster and a small, old-model TV. Since Mr. Wilson had worked as an electrician in his past life, he connected his apartment to the public power grid. He had done so illegally, but no one but his friends knew about it. As night began to fall, small groups of homeless people made their way secretly to the bridge. Mr. Wilson was fond of scout movies and demanded that his comrades adhere strictly to the conspiracy. Hearing loud laughter in the coastal reeds nearby, he grabbed an iron crowbar and hid in an ambush. Out of the gloom came two figures, in whom Mr. Wilson recognized Mr. Lopez and Anton White. They had forgotten their precautions and were exchanging daytime impressions. Mr. Lopez, I've never been so lucky. I almost fell over when I saw the purse on the table in the cafe. Imagine, it was lying there, and no one was around. I immediately thought it was a sign of fate. Anton, you're as naive as a boy. Do you know how you can fail at such signs? I've been caught cheating like that a couple of times, had to serve 2 terms in jail. Mr. Lopez, don't think you're smarter than everybody else. I've heard stories like that too, but my instincts work like a Baskerville dog. Idiots, why are you yelling at the whole neighborhood? His appearance was so unexpected that the comrades began to hiccup with fear. The buddies had already had a drink beforehand, and their imaginations were running wild. Anton, stammering, muttered, "Mr. Wilson, your eyes shine like the dog in the book." Mr. Lopez, too, had an unpleasant second. He was outraged at the reception. "What a visit, we do no harm to anyone, and you, Mr. Wilson, scare us like that." The owner of the cottage under the bridge laughed with satisfaction. "What, were you scared? It's your own fault. How many times have I warned you to be quiet? You bring the police to my lair, and we'll all be finished." Anton began to make excuses. "But we were being quiet, and who's going to walk around here in the middle of the night? This place is abandoned, and decent people, not counting us, don't come here." Mr. Lopez shooed his comrade away. "Anton, you certainly won't die of modesty, you talk and talk and talk. Do me a favor and be quiet for a while." Anton took offense. "You better look at yourself. You're the one who started talking on the way over here, and I just wanted to keep the conversation going." Mr. Wilson shouted at his comrades. "Enough of your swearing. Come inside, I've got potatoes for a snack." Anton immediately forgot about the grudges. "Wow, where did you find her?" "Places to know. At the market I looked a little, the merchants there throw bad goods in the trash, and I looked, normal potatoes. Everybody is so spoiled these days, they throw them in the trash if they get a bad product." Mr. Lopez held up his index finger. "That's because there are only rich people around." Mr. Lopez wanted to continue his accusatory speech, but Mr. Wilson interrupted him abruptly. "Are we having a show here? Or are we going to take a break? The potatoes are getting cold, come to the table." Anton rubbed his hands together contentedly, and then, with a deft movement of a magician, pulled a bottle of vodka from behind his groove. "Here comes the main course." The eyes of everyone in the company lit up with a gleam, and Anton chanted. Come on, pour it for everyone. Let the stars burn brighter for us. Mr. Lopez nodded approvingly, encouraging Anton's vocal talent. Well done, Anton. You're a romantic, you sing well, it feels good. We should drink to that. With a short pause, after the first drink the second followed, and the friends were drawn to frank conversations. The first to open frank talks was Mr. Lopez, and though the story of the 60-year-old man the friends had learned by heart, they did not disturb him. Whether it was the vodka or Anton's song that got to him, he shed a few tears. I used to be a normal man. All these years I was driving, and then just like that, no job, no family, and the main thing, nobody cares about you. Mr. Wilson interrupted his fellow man's anguish. Don't torture yourself, Mr. Lopez. Do you think you're the only one? I, too, happened to be in this damned life, and I was a respected man. At one time I was even the boss of my firm, but the winds of change came and I was out of a job, and the company didn't help me in any way. It is better not to remember the past. Let's have another drink. They drank and greedily ate their potatoes. Suddenly Anton became suspicious. Quiet. I think the car is coming. Mr. Wilson ordered. I'm going to go check it out, and you stay here. Be quiet. It's quite possible it's the police. I don't want you and I to get caught by them. Mr. Lopez and Anton froze in anticipation, and the owner quickly stepped out behind the tarpaulin cloak that served as the front door. Outside, the rain was drizzling and gusts of wind were increasing. This sound allowed Mr. Wilson to get close to where the black SUV was parked. The river receded farther and farther each year, and locals turned the area under the bridge into a spontaneous dumping ground. Branches and small trees had been uprooted to complete the garbage landscape, so Mr. Wilson had no trouble finding a good spot to watch. The SUV door slammed, and two men jumped out of the car. One of them commanded, "Come on, hurry up." Again a mixture of different sounds were heard, and then something heavy fell on the rocks. Master, that wasn't our agreement. We should have come closer to the water. The first voice said, Don't you see what's going on here? I don't want to wreck my new car here. Nothing will happen to you if you work a little harder. Work off your feet and make sure it's clean. You understand me? The other man grumbled grudgingly, Got it. The car door slammed softly again, and the SUV slowly moved off. The car drove not far from the spot where Mr. Wilson had been secretly watching. He could even make out the license plates. It was too early to leave the hideout, since he could have been seen by the man who had stayed behind. The volunteer detective did not feel the cold and continued to wait for the outcome of the situation, while the man took his time. He was smoking. Finally, he hoisted a black bag on his shoulder, which looked very much like a human body in outline, and headed toward the river. On the way the man was cursing heavily, and Mr. Wilson guessed that all the cursing was addressed to the owner of the black SUV. Mr. Wilson carefully crawled out of his hiding place and immediately heard Anton whisper enthusiastically, Gee. Just like in the movies. There were two eyes glowing in the pitch-black darkness, and Mr. Wilson really wanted to punch his fist into the spot between those two lights. He hissed, I told you not to interfere. Why did you come here? Anton said peacefully, You were gone a long time, so I went to check. I thought you might have been caught by the police. So you should thank me for my vigilance, not swear. Anton got up from the ground and stood to his full height. Mr. Wilson grabbed him by the edge of his coat. What do you think you're doing? Anton grinned, Relax, the danger has passed. That man with the corpse is already far away and can't hear us. What makes you think he has a corpse? I'm an expert at this. I used to see a story like that in the 90s. The companions walked at a brisk pace toward their hideout. When they were almost on target, Anton asked, Look, Mr. Wilson, I think we're witnessing something bad. And I don't like it. Neither do I, so we'd better keep quiet and Mr. Lopez doesn't have to say anything. They sneaked into their dwelling and saw their comrade sleeping peacefully there. Anton remarked with a smile. "Well done, the man has had a drink and is sleeping at his pleasure." Anton stretched out his hands to the heater. "My inner voice is telling me strongly that we should have a drink too and take the edge off." The potatoes were already cold, but the friends didn't even pay attention to this fact. They were still under the impression of the night's event they had to witness. In order not to wake Lopez, they talked in whispers. Anton squinted at the exit. "To be honest, I don't like the whole thing. I know from experience what they do to casual witnesses." Mr. Wilson cast an unkind glance toward his buddy. "It is for this reason that I advise you to forget everything you saw. Let's go to bed." Anton realized that the master of the house was no longer in the mood for conversation, and settled down near the entrance. When Mr. Wilson awoke in the morning with a headache and a severe dry mouth, his buddies were gone. Mr. Wilson was very curious by nature and decided to investigate the scene of the night's crime. Almost immediately, he found a plastic card with the coordinates of the Zaria Fitness Club at the spot where the SUV had gotten stuck during the night. The business card had a picture of a slim, beautiful girl on it, and at the bottom it said, "At our club, all wishes come true. Don't miss your chance." He might not have picked up the card, but he really liked the girl depicted on it. He carefully peeled the plastic off the dirt and stuffed it into one of the many pockets of his clothes. The rain was still drizzling, and so in the headlights the smooth road surface looked like an ice rink. Despite the enormous risk, Robert drove fast down the highway at top speed. All kinds of thoughts occupied his head, but not once did regret slip through his mind. Only fear lurked somewhere deep inside. Robert feared that the moment would come when he would have to pay dearly for what he had done. It was probably that unpleasant feeling that made him take the risk. It was as if he tried to hide from himself, but it was impossible, because he could not stop thinking about it. When the lights of the regional center loomed ahead, the cell phone rang. The man pressed the green button and immediately heard Logan's calm voice. "Robert, the shipment has been dispatched." He answered dryly and briefly. "I understand. Don't call again. The settlement will be on your card in an hour." This message calmed him down a bit, and he reduced his speed to 80 kilometers. More than anything else in the world, Robert wanted to drink a glass of cognac and rest now, but as he approached the country mansion he noticed lights in the windows on the first floor. This circumstance angered him, and he exclaimed loudly, "Damn woman! She's had enough of me already. Drives me. And it's not out of the question that I'll get rid of her that way too." This torrent of complaints was addressed to Jennifer, who served in the house as housekeeper and mistress of the mistress's husband. But in fact this beautiful and very intelligent woman was the chief counselor of the Addams family. True, there was no one left of this world-famous business family, which suited Robert best. It was for this reason that he was willing to tolerate even the society of Jennifer, who had long dreamed of taking Polly's place. Heading toward the house along the park path, Robert realized this fact for the first time, and for the first time felt a joyous sense of accomplished retribution. The anger at Jennifer was instantly gone, and when the woman rushed to his neck without a word, he kissed her. "It's over, my good one, though that's no reason to drink champagne just yet. We must wait a few days, and then we will proceed according to our plan." The woman looked at him dreamily and asked playfully, "Robert, does this robe look good on me?" The man only now noticed that Jennifer was wearing his wife's robe. Rage came over his head in a wave. "Are you out of your mind? Why are you wearing that?" The man yanked the robe hard, and Jennifer rolled her eyes. "If you only knew how long I've been waiting for this moment." He tried to get back to reality, but Jennifer always made him lose his mind. They stayed up until almost morning, and when Jennifer fell asleep with a serene smile on her lips, the man made his way to the greenhouse and lit a cigarette. He did not turn on the light and sat for a long time, gazing into the shadows of exotic plants, resembling the silhouettes of people in the darkness. All of this brought up an unpleasant association for Robert, associated with a long visit to his father in the maximum security penal colony where he had served his time. Given the prisoner's grave state of health, his father had terminal tuberculosis, they were given a 2-day visit, And it was those 2 days that were decisive in the boy's fate. Although Robert grew up in a full family, he was not spoiled by parental attention. His mother taught biology at school, his father tried to become a successful businessman, but he never succeeded, so they simply did not have enough time for their son. But there were regular scandals in the family, the parents spared neither energy nor precious time for them. When the boy was very young, his mother constantly rebuked his father for being away at work all day and night, but the family still did not have enough money even for the most basic necessities. The heated arguments usually took place during dinner, so Robert witnessed them. It was usually his mother who started it. "Dylan, this can't go on indefinitely. I don't understand the point of your business." For a while my father tried to remain calm. "If you don't understand, why start this conversation at all? You, Nana, want everything at once, but it doesn't happen that way. It happens, but not to you. Tell me, please, why does your partner live in luxury? You share a business, but he has a fancy mansion and a late model car. It is written about him in all the newspapers, his wife and daughter can afford any whim." My father was usually annoyed by this kind of talk, and he got nervous. At such moments, he was no longer in control of himself and spoke rudely to his wife. "Yes, we have business in common, but Lucas runs everything. How many times have I asked you to stay out of my business?" Mother was losing control, too. "I'd love not to have this conversation if you could provide me and my son with a normal life. But I've been living like this for 10 years. Believe me, I'm even embarrassed to change my shoes in the teacher's lounge because I'm afraid my colleagues will notice my stitched tights. Even my son has to sew up his socks. It's humiliating." The mother spoke out very vehemently to the father, and one day he gave in under her pressure. When another family dinner began with a harsh question from his mother, Dylan surprisingly peacefully said, "You're right, dear, Lucas is just using me. And there is no benefit to me from our alliance with him. I have decided to go out of business. I'm going to claim my share and start my own company. People make good money on travel services today, I want to switch over to that direction, too." The mother was so pleased by this recognition of her father that she jumped up and down like a little girl. Apparently, my father hadn't considered something, because after his partnership with Lucas broke down completely, his business took a turn for the worse. His mother rebuked him again, and he made new promises to her, but nothing changed. One day, when he and his mother were returning together from school, 2 men in leather jackets blocked their way in the driveway. One twisted the scarf around the woman's neck into a tight noose so that Nana began to choke. 12-year-old Robert rushed to his mother's defense, but the man warned him. "Boy, you better not if you don't want trouble." Then the thug twirled his scarf even more, brought his hideous face closer to his mother's face, and hissed. "Tell your husband, tell him to pay back his debt, he has a deadline of 2 weeks. If he decides to cheat my master again, you will pay for his affairs. We are very fond of female teachers." The second bandit, who was standing nearby, laughed defiantly. He held Robert suspended above the ground the whole time. This humiliating scene took place during the day, but no one stood up for her and her mother because everyone was afraid of such thugs. The neighbors who saw this unsightly scene tried to quickly hide in the entryway. When the assailants disappeared, Nana immediately rushed home. She cried very hard and packed her things. "I knew it would end like this. It's a good thing those bandits didn't kill us right away. Then you and I, Robert, have a chance to stay alive." The teenager watched the packing in amazement and wanted to ask his mother where they were going, but she revealed her plan to him herself. "Son, don't stand idly by, pack your things and take only the essentials. You and I will go far, far away, no one will find us there for sure." The boy still stood at a loss. "Mama, what about Papa?" The woman at this moment was trying to zipper up her thick travel bag. "Daddy? Let Daddy handle his own business. I'm sick of being scared all the time. If only Daddy's adventures made any difference. It's costing us nothing. And now he's set us up, too." The packing was so quick that they didn't even eat at home. Nana carried 2 huge bags on her shoulders and handed a small bag to her son. "Robert, here are all our papers, look, don't lose them." As they exited the entryway, they bumped into the father, who was clearly not expecting to meet his wife and son with the bags. "Nana, where are you going?" "Someplace far away from you. And don't try to find us." The man tried to stop his spouse. "Explain what happened." "And you ask that of those thugs who almost killed me, here in front of the neighbors, an hour ago. You, Dylan, are a dangerous man. Come on, son." A cab was just passing by, and the woman waved her hand. "Please, to the train station." The cab driver dashingly turned around on the little patch outside the house and sped off in the direction indicated. Robert saw his father watching the car with a lost look. He remembered him standing in the driveway with his briefcase in one hand. He and his mother had first gone to his aunt's mountain town, but the distant relative had not made them very welcome, and they had gone to Santa Clara, where his mother's friend from high school worked as principal. Robert was at an age when it was difficult to get used to a new place of study, so he had not the fondest memories of that period. Nana, for some unknown reason, did not blame his spouse for all the trouble, but his schoolmate Lucas Adam. Robert had only seen his father's former partner a few times, but his antipathy to the man grew stronger every day. He had similar feelings about his father's former partner's family, his wife and young daughter. Nana complained every day about her unfortunate fate. "If it weren't for the Adams, you and I, son, would be living in the city as a family right now, and we wouldn't know any grief. Never trust your friends. Your daddy was too trusting, too, and he ended up with nothing." For years the boy had grown a desire to avenge himself and his father and mother. At that vulnerable age, Robert never once considered the fact that his mother herself was violating her own assertions. Immediately after moving to another city, she changed her name to her maiden name. She felt it necessary to put her son in her father's name as well. When a friend, with whom they lived at first, told her that she could not tear her son away from his father, the mother said, "I don't want my child to have problems in the future. There's no telling what else my ex-husband might do." The mother's fears were soon confirmed. Through acquaintances, she learned that Dylan had been imprisoned. Because the woman shielded her son from stress and bad influences, she did not tell him about what had happened for a long time, but Robert himself found out that his father had committed a serious crime. He began to question his mother, but she only replied, "It was his own fault. I knew it would end like this." The boy really wanted to know what his father was in jail for, but his mother evaded a straight answer. "You don't want to know, son." The boy thought his father was having financial difficulties and didn't ask his mother any more questions. Soon, he finished high school and enrolled in an institute. Nana convinced him that the profession of economist was very much in demand, and he applied to the Faculty of Economics. He was in his final year when his mother showed up unannounced. She was alarmed about something, though she tried to hide it with mirth. "And I missed you, son, so I came. Aunt Zoe sent me to the bakery a long time ago. She baked you a lot of delicious things." The woman pulled out the groceries from her bag and brought the students to their complete delight. "Mom, why so much? I can't eat it all in a month." Nana clasped her fingers together and looked her son in the eye. "There's not enough groceries here for 2. Robert wondered. "Who's the other one?" Nana chose her words carefully. "Son, here's the thing. Your father is very sick / he has only weeks or months to live. He really wants to see you and me. Here, read the letter." His mother handed him the envelope. With trembling hands, the boy pulled out a notebook page on which only a few lines were written in familiar handwriting. "My dearest Nana and son Robert, I have no one in the world but you. Do not deny me the grace to visit me. I do not have long to live, so I want to say goodbye to you." Nana did not take her eyes off her son. "What do you think?" "I think you and I should go. Whatever a man is, you can't deny him his wish." "Robert, I think so, too. especially since it's your father." The next day he excused himself from the dean's office, and he and his mother went to the neighboring region where his father was serving time. Dylan looked terrible. Robert was frightened by the feverish glint in his eyes and the unhealthy blush on his cheeks. He was a completely different person. The only thing that remained the same was his hatred for his high school friend. For almost 2 days my father lamented his ruined life, but blamed only Lucas Adam. "Son, remember, this family are our worst enemies. Lucas took all my money and threw it away for nothing. When I asked him for my invested business development money back, he threw pennies in my face and kicked me out the door." During his story, the man took frequent breaks to cough. Robert felt sorry for his father and took his words as a precept for his future life. Nana never once blamed her spouse during the entire date. She was silent and crying, but no words of sympathy were heard from her ex-husband either. As they were saying goodbye, Dylan said to his son, "Robert, you'll have to decide for yourself what to do about it. In principle, you can forget everything I've said here, but if I were you, I'd avenge my father, because it's Adam's fault I'm here, too. He put me in prison. I had nothing to do with his wife's death." Only at that moment did Robert realize what his father was accused of. "So you're involved in something like this?" Dylan coughed, and when the attack passed, replied with undisguised irritation. "I'm telling you, Lucas set me up. When he and his wife were walking from the theater, they were attacked. One of them, according to Lucas, looked like me, and he confirmed that in court. I may sound really bad now, but I'm glad Lucas Adam is left handicapped. I'm truly sorry about his wife, though." After this confession, Robert felt a great deal of mental discomfort. He was silent all the way back, and his brain was working hard. Nana, too, was silent. Only once did she say, "Daddy made a will in your name. Now you and I can go back to town in peace." The young man was shocked. "Mother, is that really all you have to say? I am amazed at your cynicism. Don't you feel sorry for your father at all? You could at least have had the decency to say something nice about him." "I'm sorry, but I have no good words left." Dylan himself walked hard and for many years to this sad ending. "Yes, I feel a little sorry for him, but life goes on, and I'm not going to suffer every day." That trip to juvie and the subsequent conversation with his mother were pivotal in Robert's life. He kept seeing the image of his father, thin, sick and very angry. That image became an image of injustice to him. After this trip, he changed his attitude toward his mother. She was no longer his authority. He avoided meeting her and hardly called her, but Dylan was fated to die within her walls. For health reasons, he was released early. Robert buried his father in the town cemetery and began to hatch a plan to avenge his father. After rains that had poured all week, it was the first sunny day. The weather was cool enough, the sun peeking out from behind the clouds promised warmth. The night before, the wind had changed, and Gabriel had planned to go fishing in the morning. The old man liked to sit with a fishing rod by the river and almost always returned home with a good catch. He assembled his tackle, the fish bait he had prepared in advance, and blew his whistle. The dog, whom Gabriel had taken into custody 2 years ago, immediately responded to that signal with a ringing bark. He petted the pet affectionately on the withers. "Well, Leo, shall we go try our luck?" The dog wagged his fluffy tail and barked approvingly. It wasn't far to the river, and they headed out through the young forest that had grown after the fire. Old Gabriel was shunned by the inhabitants of the surrounding villages. The place where the man lived was also notorious. There was a legend that there used to be a mill on the spot where Gabriel's house now stands. It was run by a landowner, the namesake of the famous commander. This man lived well, because the mill worked around the clock. But when the new government came to power, the landowner's whole family was sent to prison. The mill owner himself died in that very place, and old people said that strange things began to happen in the mill after he died. Strange noises were constantly heard and the millstones began to turn by themselves. The new government laughed at the superstitious locals, until the chairman of the artel went mad. On his order, the workers went to the mill to get flour, but they did not reach the facility, as they saw the ghost of the former owner nearby. The men returned, shaking with fear. "The late Gabriel won't let us in, he keeps wandering around the mill." The chairman of the artel was a brave man. He had served in Budyonny's legendary cavalry and had performed many heroic feats during the Civil War. After listening to the men, he said contemptuously, "You are just afraid. I'll go to the mill myself, and you help me carry the sacks. You don't want to work and you make up all kinds of nonsense." The helpers were baptized all the way, but they did so cautiously, because with the coming of the new government any religion was forbidden. By the time they reached the mill, it was getting dark, and the chairman cheerfully commanded the men, "Unload the sacks. Take them to the door, and then I'll do it myself, since you are such weaklings." The men were not going to prove to the chairman that they were not afraid of otherworldly forces. They quickly dumped the sacks of grain and ran back. The chairman was left alone, and no one knows exactly what happened next. In the morning, when everyone started looking for him, they found him in the woods. The man was in a state of disarray and his clothes were torn to shreds. His hair had turned gray overnight, but the most amazing thing was that all the grain had been ground into flour and the sacks were neatly stacked. After that terrible incident, the villagers tried several times to burn down the old mill, but the fire would not go out. As soon as the flames broke out, they were immediately extinguished. Over the years, the structure collapsed on its own, and everyone began to avoid the place. No one remembers when the old man Gabriel appeared. One day, mushroom hunters went to the woods and noticed a wooden house standing on the site of the former mill, reported the new neighbor to the precinct, and he went to the place. As it turned out, the regional authorities allowed Gabriel to build a house where the mill stood almost 100 years ago. To all questions the district officer replied, "This man is a direct relative of the old miller. He is the heir and has every right to live here." The local population did not want to accept the new inhabitant, but the village folklore was filled with new myths. Now they were making up tales about Gabriel himself. They were especially inspired by the fact that the man had only one healthy eye. Some villagers came up with the version that the old man's eye problems were hereditary, for his grandfather also wore a black patch. It was useless to remind them that the great general had lost an organ of vision as a result of a wound during the war. Gabriel had heard these ridiculous rumors, but he only grinned into his mustache. The elderly man rarely appeared in the village when the need was acute, but this arrangement suited everyone and the locals continued to make up new stories about the one-eyed old man. Indeed, there was a kinship between the old miller and this mysterious old man. The grandfather, who was exiled to the north together with his mother and sisters, told his grandson about it. The new generation of the Gabriel family rarely remembered the past. Gabriel himself chose a military profession and has been in various places. After a serious head wound, he was discharged. The man was even happy about it, as he had longed to return to normal life, but his wife found another husband. She nearly fainted when she saw her missing spouse on the doorstep of the apartment. "Gabriel. But you are missing. The people from the military recruitment office came to see us and said there was no hope." Of course Gabriel was shocked by such a cold reception. He wanted to go into the apartment, but his wife asked, "Gabriel, please don't ruin our lives. My son and I have already resigned ourselves to the idea that you are gone. I met a good man, he treats Elijah beautifully, loves him like his own son." Gabriel said nothing. He turned and left without ever seeing his son. Nearly 20 years later, Elijah found his father on his own, and grandson Aiden spent every summer at his grandfather's house. This year, too, he spent almost 2 months vacationing in that quiet place. The memories of his grandson echoed warmly in the man's heart, and he muttered aloud, "Yes, Aiden and I had a good fishing trip this year. We had such good fishing. Leo, am I saying that right?" The dog barked a loud bark, pleased that his master had stopped thinking and was paying attention to him, for he, too, was a member of the little fishing party and was guarding the catch on behalf of Gabriel. While the old man was preparing his tackle, the four-legged companion decided to look around just in case. He barked a couple more times, looking faithfully into his master's eyes, and Gabriel grinned. Leo, don't suck up. You can run, but don't run far. In the meantime, I'll keep an eye on the fish. The dog jumped into the dry thickets that stretched in a solid wall along both banks of the river. The old man was about to cast his fishing line when suddenly Leo barked loudly. He had learned his faithful dog's habits and could tell by the barking when Leo was barking. This time the dog was agitated. The old man hurried off, muttering under his breath unhappily. What did he see out there? Gabriel began to make his way through the reeds, and Leo continued to bark frantically. The man scratched his face and hands as he reached the spot where the river turned steeply to the east. The current was stronger here, so it was dangerous to swim. Leo barked, staring at one point. As a military man, Gabriel was shocked. Despite the decent distance, he could make out a large black object that was caught on a branch. The current tried to rip it off, but to no avail. Leo, what do you think it could be? The dog whimpered pitifully, and the owner tried to reassure the pet. Are you scared? To be honest, I'm a little bit too. I even have a bad feeling about this unexpected gift. I'll have to climb into the icy water to find out what's in there. Will you come with me? The dog refused to bathe, and the older man only shook his head. I didn't think you were a coward. Gabriel moved cautiously forward, resisting the strong current. Despite his vision problems, he could still see the outline of the find from a distance. I think there's a man in there. We must hurry, maybe he is still alive. The old man had to spend another 10 minutes navigating the water obstacle. The last meters he had to swim in the icy water. The moment he reached his goal, a black plastic bag was ripped off a snag by the current, but the man managed to catch it. He had already guessed what was in that bag, torn in several places. Jesus. Victim again. If it had been a drowning man, it wouldn't have been a bag. There was obviously malice involved. Although the load was not too heavy, the man struggled to drag it to shore. The dog immediately ran up to his owner and started sniffing at the find. That's it, Leo, our fishing trip didn't work out. If I'm not mistaken, there's a mermaid in there. The old man tore open the sturdy bag and carefully extracted the body of the young girl. He put his fingers to the area where the carotid artery runs and joyfully exclaimed. Alive, but unconscious. Who has done you so badly, beautiful girl? The girl's face was covered with abrasions, and in some places fresh lacerations. Suddenly her eyelashes fluttered, and the girl opened her eyes for a moment. Leo was most pleased by this. He rushed to her and began to lick her wounded face. Gabriel said menacingly. Leo, calm down. You'll get another infection. We've got to get her home, she must be broken. The dog followed the owner, who was carrying the girl in his arms. The old man passed by the place where he was going to fish. The lovingly prepared fishing tackle was still lying lonely on the grass. Consciousness slowly returned to Polly. The girl tried to wiggle her fingers, but a sharp pain went through her whole body, and a worried voice was heard immediately nearby. Are you awake, honey? The girl struggled to open her eyes and saw the face of an unfamiliar older man. Where am I? Don't worry, you're in a safe place. By a fluke, Leo and I found you this morning. If the current had been downriver, I doubt it would have ended safely for you. Gabriel adjusted the warm blanket. You had better not speak or move yet. Your shin and arm are fractured and your body has many abrasions. I won't ask you who did this to you, you can tell me later if you want to. Get your strength. There was fog before her eyes, and Polly could not see her savior's face, but his steady and very calm voice inspired confidence. She closed her eyes and sank into memories. It was mostly scraps from her formerly very happy life, but this joyful time was marred by Robert's blurry and hate-filled face. How long have I waited for this hour, dear wife? You have no idea what pleasure your helpless state gives me. Did you, naively, think I loved you? No, darling, I only married you for revenge. You have had the great honor of settling accounts for your father, who ruined my life. Her husband said something else, and then he dragged her somewhere. Polly heard Jennifer advise him, "I spiked a big dose today, too, so she's not likely to wake up. Best to throw the body off the bridge. Then they'll think she jumped herself." Polly really couldn't move, but she could hear everything clearly. The husband replied with irritation, "I'll do without the advice. Better make sure she doesn't have her papers on her." Jennifer fumbled with her hands for a long time. It was very unpleasant. Then she said, "All clear, will be like an unidentified body." Polly really wanted to get up, to yell at her friend. She didn't understand what Jennifer was up to or why her husband was involved. A thought flashed through her brain that it was probably a bad prank, and that calmed Polly down a bit, but as she was carried somewhere again, fear completely paralyzed not only her body but the girl's mind as well. She felt herself being rudely tossed into her husband's new car. She realized by the fresh smell of leather that she found herself in the interior of Robert's new car. It was a luxury SUV with leather upholstery inside that she had given her husband for his 30th birthday not too long ago. When she fell, Polly hit her head on the metal handle of the door and lost consciousness. She woke up from the cold. It was very dark and drizzling with light rain. She wanted to scream, but her husband's voice silenced her. Robert was talking to another man. "I'm relying on you completely. Make it perfect. It will be done." As agreed, Robert, "But we should get closer to the water. It's long and uncomfortable for me to drag the body, and someone might notice." The husband answered grudgingly, "And you make sure no one sees you. You can't drive here, can't you see what's going on here? The last thing I need is to have my new car wrecked here." The second man's voice also sounded familiar to Polly, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it. This other man packed her into a large garbage bag, and she nearly suffocated. Luckily, the doer had tied the bag poorly and air was coming in small portions. Polly realized by her footsteps that she was being carried to the river. Then she was thrown into the water, and the current picked up her body at once. Polly knew that she was in danger of death. Gathering her last strength, she began to tear at the sack with her teeth and hands. It became easier to breathe, but the current carried her over the rocks, and several times she hit it very hard. The girl could not determine how many hours it all lasted, because after another blow she lost consciousness again. Polly awoke to the insistent barking of a dog, but she could not move. She opened her eyes as if to indicate that she was alive, and something warm touched her face. Polly realized that this unfamiliar dog was thus expressing his help to her. Soon the girl saw a strange old man with a gray beard and fainted again. For several days, the girl was delirious, and Gabriel did not leave her side. The man had experience in first aid, so he was not confused, and the first thing he did was to treat the wounds and fix the damaged limbs with improvised means. When the girl briefly regained consciousness, he gave her an herbal tea to drink. He had learned this in his military service. On the 5th day Polly felt better, her body was no longer in so much pain, and the open wounds began to heal little by little. In a faint voice she began to call out for her savior. "Grandpa? Are you feeling better? Where are you?" Gabriel immediately responded, "Here I am. It is good that you have come to your senses. Now we must wait for the bones to heal and the wounds to heal." The old man leaned over her and adjusted the pillows. "At least tell me your name." "Polly Adam. My daddy was a famous businessman. He died 3 months ago." The man listened and at the same time said, "It's healing well. There are no signs of inflammation. There will probably be little visible scarring left. Thank God Leo and I were in the right place, or you wouldn't have survived. I don't mean to pry, but why are you being like this? Who are you bothering?" Polly looked at her savior, and tears flowed from her eyes. "I don't know exactly myself, I don't know anything, and I don't remember much of anything. They gave me something to drink and I couldn't feel anything. I also remember Robert's angry face." "And who is Robert?" "My husband. We've been married for 2.5 years. I recently found out we're having a baby." The old man put aside the potato he was peeling and sat closer to the girl's bedside. So you're pregnant, and you're being shoved into a garbage bag like this mercilessly? Does your husband even know he's about to become a father? I told him about it 2 days before it happened, but he couldn't. Polly was shocked, and she took a new look at the little things that had seemed invisible before. But why would he do this to me? Gabriel patted the girl's arm. That will have to be dealt with. Although I think the answer to that question is on the surface. You say your father was in the business. Yes, but I didn't go into his business much. And Dad didn't like to talk about it. In general, in our house, it was not customary to talk about work, so I know almost nothing. A long time ago, about 15 years ago, when I was very young, my parents were attacked as they were returning home from the theater. My mom died on the spot, and my dad became an invalid. All my life we lived alone with him. Polly loved her father very much, and the memory of him brought a smile to her face. Gabriel was silent, waiting for the story to continue, but from her past the girl could tell little. Since childhood, Polly did not know the denial of anything. Parents tried to satisfy the slightest whim of their daughter, but she did not abuse the parental love, and her demands did not go beyond. She readily shared the latter with her school buddies. The parents only welcomed their daughter's boundless generosity because Lucas himself was a sponsor of the school where the businessman's daughter attended. He regularly gave the school financial aid, so the teachers diligently helped his heiress. But one day her father noticed the teacher's special attitude toward Polly and forbade it. During the children's party, he went up to the school principal and sternly said, "Don't spoil Polly. She is an ordinary child. And I will ask you very much that the teachers treat her like the other children." This warning began to take effect, and Polly Adam began to have an ordinary life, which made her relationships with her peers much easier. One day after school, Polly brought a friend to the house who was very poorly dressed. Tina, the girl's mother, looked apprehensively at the visitor, and her daughter got right to the point. "Mommy, Jennifer is my best friend. But she is very poor because she doesn't have a daddy. Mommy doesn't work, can she have lunch with us?" The woman tried to hide her surprise and only asked, "Of course you can, just wash your hands." Jennifer ate the milk soup greedily, and Tina felt sorry for the poor girl. She was embarrassed to ask the child any questions, but after a hearty lunch Jennifer told her own story of her life. "My mother drinks vodka, so they want to take me to an orphanage, and I don't want to go there, but I don't want to live with her either. If I could be taken to a rich family to raise me, I'd love to go." The girl looked at her mistress with a look that made her feel uncomfortable. Tina tried to change the subject. "Jennifer, what about your studies?" Polly answered for her friend. "My homeroom teacher assigned me to Jennifer to get her up to speed on her grades, so I invited her over to study a little after lunch. Jennifer has no conditions at home." Classmate Polly became a private guest at the Adams home. Almost every day after school the girls had lunch together, and then sat down for lessons. Polly's parents were glad that they could do something to help the unfortunate child. Soon there was progress in Jennifer's studies. Tina was a little surprised that her daughter was more happy about her girlfriend's success than Jennifer herself, but the woman tried to keep her personal opinion to herself and praised her daughter's efforts in every way. One day she shared her worries with her husband. "Lucas, I have nothing against our daughter's friendship with this girl, but I get the impression that Jennifer has certain goals." The man reassured his wife. "Don't think about it. What goals can a 10-year-old child have? It's absurd." "You're probably right, but then why does this girl take everything as if she's owed? She thinks the whole world owes her just because she has a bad mother. Instead of the mother taking it out on her head, you should talk to the child. Children appreciate attention and sharing their worries. I know that from my own experience." That same day, Tina spoke to her daughter's girlfriend. When she asked the girl what her dream was, Jennifer quickly replied, "I want to live in an apartment as big as this one, and to have everything Polly has. Also, Aunt Tina, I want you to adopt me, then I would get half of everything by law." The little girl's answer shocked the adult woman. It took her a long time to collect her thoughts, while Jennifer was looking at her defiantly. Tina did not start any more conversations on such topics. She avoided the company of her friend Polly. And she was well aware that this kind woman just tolerates her presence for the sake of her daughter. In time, Jennifer learned to use this to her advantage. Because Polly's soul was kind, the girlfriend began to beg her for various things. Tina didn't mind her daughter's old closet, and she herself picked out 2 bags of things for Jennifer in good condition. Only once did the woman object when her daughter decided to give her girlfriend a new pantsuit. "Polly, there's a limit to everything. We have already done so much for this girl, but it is impossible to please her without end. Especially this outfit Daddy and I gave you for your birthday." Polly was offended by her mother's remarks, and she didn't lie when Jennifer reminded her again about the costume, which she really liked. "No, Jennifer, that suit I can't give away because Mom won't let me. She says you can't give things that were given as gifts again." Having been refused, the girl spoke up. "I see, so people like me can only give old, worn-out things. I thought you were a real friend, and you're a greedy one." After running away home, she didn't show up at their house for 2 weeks, then she came back with Polly. Lucas immediately noticed that something was wrong with his daughter's girlfriend. The girl was clutching a knitted scarf to her neck and writhing in pain the whole time. The man asked sympathetically, "Jennifer, does your throat hurt? Do you have a cold?" The girl was frightened by the question and clutched her scarf even tighter. Polly answered for her. Jennifer was grabbed by her brother's neck yesterday when her mother wasn't home. Tina froze in horror, as did Lucas himself. Polly approached her girlfriend. "Jennifer, don't be afraid, show me, they won't tell anyone." The girl carefully removed her scarf. There was a distinct mark on the child's thin neck. Tina recoiled. "My God, what a horror. Something must be done about it." Lucas was deeply impressed by this fact, but he tried to remain calm. "Jennifer, I want to talk to your mother. Is she home right now? Will you show me out?" The girl was a little embarrassed, but agreed to show the businessman where her family lived. Lucas was not expecting what he saw. The door was opened to him by an unkempt woman who smelled strongly of breath, and she immediately pounced on her daughter. "Where have you been? Mother needs to go to the store, because she's very sick. I even wanted to call an ambulance, but your brother wouldn't let me." Lucas walked uninvited into the apartment, which was a mess. There was a young guy sleeping on the squashed couch. The businessman guessed it was the Logan. But just in case, he asked the girl, "Is that your brother?" She nodded her head. "And why did he do that to you?" "He was missing money. He thought I was the one who took it." The mother raised her voice. "Why did you come here? We didn't invite guests, and we can take care of our own domestic problems. We don't need helpers." The man calmly replied. "And I'm not visiting. I see that today it is useless to talk to you, and tomorrow I will wait for you in my office." The businessman gave his business card to the woman who opened her mouth in amazement. "I want to give you one last chance to change your life. Don't you understand that you are falling into the abyss? If you do not feel pity for yourself, at least have pity for your children." The woman screamed. "I don't care about your warnings. Jennifer, go quickly to your room, I'll deal with you later. Why do you go around complaining about your own brother? Logan hit you just a little bit." The girl was about to quickly do her mother's bidding, but Lucas held her back and told her mother, "The girl will stay with us tonight, and if you don't show up tomorrow, I'll report you to child welfare." "Scared you?" The woman cringed, but took the card in her hands and studied it carefully. Jennifer then described the scene in detail, and concluded by saying, "You have a great father. I envy you with parents like that. Nothing to fear, and I'm wildly unlucky." Lucas' visit did not go without consequences for the 5th grader's family. It was unclear what had influenced the girl's mother more, the threat of termination of parental rights or the desire to start a normal life. The next morning she showed up at Adam's office. The businessman personally talked to her and promised to help the family if the woman quit drinking and take to mind. Soon Jennifer reported, not without pride, "My mom's working. Your dad got her settled, and things are different at home now. Even my brother doesn't pester me anymore. The businessman's help didn't end there. Even later, after the tragedy that happened to him, he constantly helped the girl. After graduating high school, on his advice, Jennifer enrolled in medical school. Lucas helped her all 3 years. Polly chose a different path for herself. She decided to devote her life further to the work begun by her father. She enrolled at the Institute of Management and Administration. Her father's disability forced Polly to change her attitude towards life. At first, she even wanted to refuse to enter the institute, but Lucas insisted. You are the only heiress, and I need the business to which I have devoted my life to fall into reliable hands. So you just need to get a good education. The girl was very worried about her father. Daddy, how will you be alone? That's all right, we'll hire a man. I'm sure Jennifer won't refuse to help us, especially since she's practically a registered nurse already. Her friend cringed as usual when Polly offered to be a nurse to her sick father. Polly, this is so unexpected. I've actually been dreaming of getting a job in a cosmetology clinic. There are prospects there, and being a caregiver is so boring. Jennifer, I have no one else, and Dad wants you around. After all, your own person, you might say, a family member. If I were a member of your family, I wouldn't have to go to that school. Okay, I'll think about it. Jennifer, there is no time to think about it. I have to leave the day after tomorrow, and I cannot leave my dad alone. At the friend of these arguments did not produce any attention, and Polly launched a last argument. We will pay you in double, and you can make yourself comfortable for your schedule, which will allow you to work in your cosmetology clinic. Would that work for you? Jennifer made a displeased face and thought a little more, but in her heart she was triumphant. At last my hour has come. I'm going to give that narcissistic Polly a sweet life, and I'm going to take everything she has from her handicapped daddy. Polly had no idea what her friend was thinking. She naively believed that Jennifer would repay her kindness in gratitude for her many years of support, but envy and kindness are not compatible concepts. Polly's parents had always dreamed of living in the countryside. While his wife was still alive, Lucas began to build a 2-story cottage in an elite village, which was located near the regional center, but after the tragedy, he first wanted to abandon the plan, then changed his mind. The man decided to consult his daughter on the matter. Polly, our mother really wanted to have her own house. Do you think we should grant her wish? The girl readily replied. Of course, Daddy. I, too, really want us to have a beautiful house. You and I will be sure to plant lots of flowers. Mom loved flowers so much. You're right, baby. Our mom always dreamed of creating a greenhouse so we could enjoy a green summer in the winter, too. As construction dragged on, the businessman changed contractors, which yielded positive results. In just 6 months the object was completely ready. The move did not take much time and brought a lot of positive emotions. The owner was especially happy that he could move freely in the territory, because builders took into account his special condition, and at each entrance was a ramp, and from the 2nd floor could go down in the elevator. The owners of suburban housing triumphed, and Jennifer not another attack of envy. She also dreamed of becoming the owner of such a luxurious mansion. When she had such an opportunity, she immediately set about implementing her bold plans. She was not embarrassed that Lucas had a native daughter. She believed that she could take her place one day. And for Jennifer it didn't matter moral principles. She was determined to achieve her ultimate goal. Polly was at a complete loss when, upon arriving for the vacations, she noticed that her father, always friendly to her, was suddenly grumbling at her unhappily. Daughter, could you come to your parents' house more often? I am being cared for by a stranger, and it makes me uncomfortable. The girl was surprised. Daddy, if Jennifer can't do her job, why don't we hire another more experienced caregiver? The man was indignant. I won't let anyone near me. Thanks to Jennifer, I'm still alive and well, and you just want to throw my father into someone else's hands. I didn't expect such an indifferent attitude from you. It was very upsetting to hear such reproaches, and Polly shortened the vacation time, but the girl still took into account the wishes of her sick father and began to come on weekends. The frequent visits now irritated Jennifer. Why do you come so often now? Or don't you trust me? Why, Jennifer, how could you think of such a thing? Papa wants to see me more often. He's changed a lot, he used to be cheerful, and now. Polly, what kind of fun can a man confined to a wheelchair have? At least think sometimes before you say anything. You're having a good time in the capital, and I'm tearing myself apart here. Jennifer, if it's so hard for you, you can leave. I've already told my father to find you a replacement. Her friend cried out as if she'd been hit in the ankles with a nettle. That's where this is coming from. And I wondered why Lucas was in such a mood. Turns out you're the one turning him against me. Convincing Jennifer otherwise was useless. Polly, having swallowed another dose of resentment, left again for the capital. For several months she did not appear at home, but her stay was interrupted by a call from her nurse. Polly, where have you disappeared to? Lucas is worried. Come quickly. This time Jennifer's voice was cheerful and even joyful, which surprised Polly very much. The reason for the optimistic mood of the girl soon found out. Jennifer personally met her friend at the train station, and as they routinely headed to the cab stand, the friend declared, I have my own car now. Let's go. Lucas gave me such a gorgeous birthday present. I hope you're not going to judge him for his generosity to me? By the way, you even forgot to congratulate me. The girl babbled confusedly. Sorry, it slipped my mind. Polly got into her friend's brand new car and, for the first time in her incomplete 20s, experienced an unpleasant feeling of jealousy. All she could think of was, why would he give his nurse such expensive gifts? Polly was doubly offended because she herself had not yet had her own car. Once she wanted to talk about it, but Lucas said that she was inattentive, and therefore it was too early for her to drive. The private car was not the last surprise. As they walked into the house and Polly headed toward her room, her friend stopped her. Oh, I forgot to warn you. I'm borrowing your room for a while, I hope you won't mind. Jennifer still looked at Polly defiantly. She expected to hear approval in return, but the businessman's daughter said suddenly and harshly. Jennifer, I'm used to living in my room. Don't be offended, but we have separate rooms in the house for the servants, and the conditions are not bad at all. It seems right to me when the chain of command is respected. In this simple way Polly put her friend in her place. Jennifer was already accustomed to dispose of the house at will, and the comments of the hostess's daughter was considered a humiliation. Jealousy added another thing to her heart, hatred. Jennifer quickly emptied Polly's room of her belongings, but from that moment she began to think how she could hurt the offender more. She had to wait 3 long years for the right moment. Ever since Jennifer moved into the Adams home, the friends had been limited to business communication. Polly paid the nurse a monthly salary, and she reported her expenses to her mistress. Lucas controlled his business from home, and this state of affairs suited all, so Polly did not tell his girlfriend anything about her personal affairs. In turn, Jennifer was not lost and made love to Lucas's driver, and then to one of the guards. It's not hard to guess what this young lady's surprise was when Polly showed up one day accompanied by a tall, handsome man. Meet Robert. He's my friend and soon-to-be husband. Jennifer was numb with surprise. She had in no way expected such a turn of events and could not recover from her confusion for a long time. Lucas, on the contrary, was looking at the well-dressed young man with interest. He gladly shook the young man's hand. It's a pleasure. Polly tells me that you also work in the construction business. Robert smiled kindly. Not exactly. The company I work for does mostly design. The 0 stage is the most important stage in any project, and it's no secret that most mistakes arise precisely because of an illiterate approach. At this point, the young man looked at the girl's father with undisguised admiration. It's too early for me to draw such conclusions, for I am only a year out of university, he said. Forgive me, Robert, for being tactless, but what do your parents do? Sadness came over the young man's face. I'm an orphan. My parents died in a plane crash, so I was raised in an orphanage. If it's no secret, which institution? This is a question the guest clearly did not expect. He stared at his host and inarticulate. At first I was a prestigious place, but then I was transferred. Lucas realized he had embarrassed the guy with his clumsy question. Robert, you will forgive my curiosity. My interest in this subject stems from the fact that I have been involved in charity work for many years, which is why I asked where you were raised. Polly's father quickly moved on from the slippery subject and moved the conversation into the business sphere. Robert cheered up and answered his host's questions with more confidence. Noticing that the men were having a passionate conversation on a topic close to their hearts, Jennifer winked at her friend. You quiet girl. Polly saw that her friend was bursting with curiosity and followed her into the greenhouse. Jennifer immediately began her interrogation. Polly, confess, where did you find a guy like that? On Jennifer's face froze that familiar expression of childlike interest that had always won her friend's heart. The ice of mistrust began to thaw little by little. Jennifer, you won't believe this, but we met on the street. It's that simple and even trivial. I didn't expect that from you. Can a girl from a decent family afford such an acquaintance? Polly jokingly swung at her friend. Are you going to mock me some more? Jennifer laughed heartily. Okay, I won't ask you, you can tell me if you want to. Polly rolled her eyes dreamily. There's not much to tell. It's just that I started seeing a nice-looking young man around the university a lot. Of course, I was surprised that he often caught my eye, but I pretended not to notice him. Jennifer slapped her hand on her knee. Polly, I don't believe it. Is that possible these days? I guess I'm the exception, because that's exactly how it was with us for almost a month, maybe more. We met on the street every day. Clearly, it all seemed like pure chance. Time went on and nothing changed, then I decided to stop this game, and I approached him myself. Polly, you approached the guy first? What's the big deal? I walked up and said, if you're following me, I'm calling the police right now. I wonder how he reacted. He didn't. He laughed, and then said he'd been wanting to meet me for a long time, but he hadn't dared to approach me. I can't believe a guy that good-looking suffers from complexes. You know, I didn't believe it at first either, but Robert is really embarrassed a lot and even blushes. He's very shy. Polly, is it serious? Just be honest. Well, think about it. Would I come with a guy I'm dating out of boredom? We've been together for 6 months and recently applied. Oh, come on, girlfriend. Everyone at school thought you were quiet, and there you are. Jennifer, you and I are both 22 and it's time to think about marriage. You don't get lost either. When am I going to look for a fiancé if I don't move away from Lucas? Jennifer's voice had a pity note in it again, and she was about to cry on her girlfriend's shoulder about her unhappy fate, but Polly interrupted her. Jennifer, Daddy is doing just fine on his own with the day-to-day problems. Especially now he has a new chair with a control panel. I won't lie to you, but I've heard some rumors about your love affairs. Jennifer wanted to be outraged, but what inspired her most was the prospect of stealing her friend's fiancé. Experienced in amorous affairs, the girl was sure that one day she would succeed. Lucas immediately took a liking to his daughter's fiancé, and he made inquiries about the young man through his connections, just in case, and received most positive reviews. The businessman was a little confused about one thing: there was no record of the boy's childhood, which aroused some suspicions. The date of the plane crash, in which his parents had allegedly died, was alarming. The man tried to take this small incongruent detail calmly, because the guy was worried and missed the date a little. This thought calmed the man down, and he was already imagining Robert as a member of the Addams family. Even before the wedding, Lucas invited his daughter and her fiancé into his office for a serious talk. Of course, you may not agree with me, but I would very much like you to live in this house. This offer was expected, so the future newlyweds immediately agreed. Robert soon joined Addams' company, and his father-in-law entrusted him with one of his deputies. Polly, too, had a job in her field. Everyone was happy, only Jennifer watched other people's happiness with anger. What infuriated her most was that Lucas had disappeared from her sphere of influence. After the wedding of Polly and Robert, she had to do only her direct duties. Because no one in the house to the advice of a nurse no longer listened, the only consolation was the car, given to her by a businessman. To relieve stress, Jennifer sometimes visited her mother and brother. In the circle of people close to her, she was able to speak freely. Mother felt sorry for her daughter, and her brother openly laughed at her. One day Logan advised, "Jennifer, you are stupid. After all, you've got this whole family in your hands, and you can turn things any way you want, you just have to pick the right moment." The girl asked her brother interestedly, "Logan, what are you talking about? Where do you want to drag me with your advice?" "Don't interrupt, little sister, I'm not offering you anything forbidden. People usually die their own deaths, they just need a little help. Can't you move your brains? You're a nurse and can easily eliminate an old invalid without too much trouble for yourself. Imagine how much room that would open up for you. I'd think about the future if I were you." "Logan, I can't do that." "And Ruth can't?" "But Lucas has done so much for me and for Mom." "So? You've been cleaning up after him for so many years. But, if anything happens to him, everything goes to the daughter, she's the rightful heir." Logan set the bottle of beer on the table with irritation and looked at his sister. "That's right, silly. With your credentials you could steal your girlfriend's husband in 5 minutes. Do I really have to teach you?" Jennifer didn't say anything back to her brother, but his words made a strong impression on her. She immediately hurried to the Adams residence, and her brother came out to see her off. "Listen, Jennifer, if you need any help, I'm always ready. And don't forget that I gave you good advice, and that means I'm in on it." Jennifer said nothing to her brother, but pondered his suggestion. Little by little a plan began to take shape in her mind, which was changing day by day, but she did not proceed at once, for it was necessary first to lull the vigilance of the venerable family and to prepare well. The first thing Jennifer decided to do was Robert. She had a good understanding of men and knew that it would not take much effort from her to turn this guy into her ally and submissive doer. The girl did not use the old methods, but proceeded cautiously. Sometimes she would sweet-talk her master's son-in-law and always try to forestall his slightest wish. The increased attention to her person touched Robert, who had been deprived of parental attention as a child. To neutralize Polly for a while, Jennifer began to frequently criticize her figure. "Girlfriend, you've gotten a lot fatter since the wedding, your sides have sagged and your hips have widened. You have to do something about that." The girl began to turn around in front of the mirror. "You really have gotten fat." "Jennifer, what to do?" "Do what?" "It is necessary to get rid of excess fat. I can recommend a fitness center, Dawn, my friend works there, they are all licensed and specialists cool. So you cannot worry about your health." Polly was glad her friend helped her and even kissed her. "Jennifer, you are a genius. I'm going to call her today and get her to sign me up for classes." The young woman went to practice twice a week after work. In her absence, Robert spent time in Jennifer's company. They had already formed a close relationship, and they sometimes completely forgot about the existence of the master of the house. Lucas had no idea of his son-in-law's double life. He was, as usual, completely immersed in his work. One day the unexpected happened. The landlord saw the couple together. Lucas wanted to ask the nurse to make a cup of strong tea, and he went straight to the girl's room, and the door was ajar. The man knew all at once and swung the door wide open. The lovers jumped up in horror, and the businessman started shouting loudly, "Get out of here! Both of you get out! This is the meanest thing I've ever seen in my life. And you, Robert, all this time you have been brazenly lying to me about your sad fate, for I knew who you really were, but kept silent for the sake of my daughter's happiness. I have always believed in justice and that the son is responsible." Robert was shaking with fear and could not move, but his brain was working intensely. The young man feverishly considered what he should do. He looked hopefully at his mistress. Jennifer, too, was confused for a few seconds, but quickly came to her senses. She ran up to her master, who had already managed to turn around and snatched the remote control from his hands. The stroller spun in place and then toppled over with a rumble. There was the sound of a falling body and then an unpleasant crunch, but Jennifer didn't even look in the direction of her motionless owner. She quickly wiped the remote with a napkin and tossed it toward the chair. Robert stood as if glued to the floor. The girl forcefully pushed him. "What are you standing there for, Robert? Polly will be here soon and then you and I will be screwed. Go away somewhere else. You weren't here, do you understand? You weren't here." When Polly returned from the club, there was an ambulance and a police car outside the house. Jennifer was hysterical in the hallway of the first floor, and a man in uniform was sitting next to her. Polly didn't understand anything and began to shake her friend by the shoulders. "Jennifer, for God's sake, tell me what happened here." The friend was breaking her hands and rolling her eyes. "Oh, Polly, it's all my fault. I wasn't looking, I was only out for a minute, and he..." Polly continued to shake the hysterical nurse. "Who is he? Robert?" "No, Robert's fine, he left right after you went off on his own business. It's Lucas, he crashed." Jennifer burst into sobs again, repeating through her tears. "I don't know how this could have happened. It's that damn stroller. How many times have I told you these things with electronics are life-threatening?" Someone nearby said loudly. Apparently, the man couldn't control it, or pressed the wrong button carelessly. The floor swayed under the young girl's feet. If the policeman hadn't picked her up in time, she too would have needed medical attention. Robert didn't show up until late afternoon, and he did a fine job of playing his part and not giving away the fact that he had been an accessory to the accident. He began to dissuade his wife, who wanted to go to the hospital. "Paula, Lucas needs rest. Jennifer has already gone to the hospital, and she will let us know your father's condition. Jennifer is everywhere. She's nobody in this house, just a nurse, and I'm a daughter, and I want to be there for Daddy." Robert failed to keep his spouse away, but he managed to warn Jennifer by calling on his cell phone. "That lunatic is on her way to the hospital, be careful there. Don't worry, no improvement is expected. The master is in intensive care and is unlikely to regain consciousness." At first Polly did not want to let the doctor on duty see her father. He closed the door to the intensive care unit with himself. "Young lady, the patient is in an extremely serious condition, so I can't let you through, especially since his daughter is already on duty near him." "What daughter? What are you talking about? I am Adam's daughter, and that one is an imposter. She's just her father's nurse." The doctor threw up his hands. "Who can tell you, making a mess here? Come in, and let your nurse leave the room, we have enough nurses of our own." When Polly appeared in the room, Jennifer flinched in surprise. "What are you showing up for?" "I want to ask you that myself, what are you doing here? Go away, let me be with my father. Your insolence has already crossed the line." Jennifer hissed something unintelligible in response, but Polly had no time for servants at that moment. She was sitting next to her father's bedside crying. Lucas was hooked up to several machines that recorded vital signs. The work of these devices is not annoying, but rather encouraging hope for a happy outcome. The girl stroked her father's hand and whispered for him not to die. Suddenly, Lucas's hand trembled. He opened his eyes slightly and asked Polly to bend over. The girl hurried to comply with her father's request and heard him whisper, "They are not who they say they are. There are papers in the greenhouse, you'll understand everything when you find them." Dad wanted to say something else, but he couldn't get enough air. Polly began to call for help from the paramedics and didn't immediately notice that the instruments were no longer working, and an endless line stretched out on the monitor of one of them. The doctor on duty said sympathetically, "I'm sorry for your loss. Unfortunately, your father was injured in a fall that was incompatible with life. The only thing that amazes me is, how could such a competent person fail to control the car? There is only one way it is possible, if your father was under extreme stress." Lucas was buried next to his wife. Polly did not leave the cemetery long after the funeral ceremony. Robert waited patiently for his wife, but his thoughts were occupied with something else entirely. He thought about how to remove the last obstacle in his life, his own wife. Winter came unnoticed. Polly looked through the small window in the morning and saw that everything around Old Man Gabriel's house was covered with a white fluffy blanket. The girl could not contain her delight. "Gabriel, how much snow has fallen in one night? It's a beauty extraordinary." The man came closer and looked out the window, too. "Isn't it wild? Everything in nature spins in a circle, summer replaces spring and winter comes after fall, and so it is in human life. At first you're young and you don't notice when old age creeps up on you." By the way, Leo has already had time to lie in the snow and barked with delight. All normal dogs are afraid of rain and snow, but this one, on the contrary, is happy. "Gabriel, you have the most wonderful dog. And you are a very good person. I don't even know how I will be without you." The old man became wary. "Where do you think you're going? You're not fully recovered yet, and you can't walk by yourself yet." The girl said, "I can't stay with you forever, I must go back to town." "And what will you do there?" "First I want to sort out the people I trusted, and then I have to get my life together somehow." The old man got worried. "Silly girl. If you don't feel sorry for yourself, think of the future child. Who will you go to when you have no one in that town? Do you want to be bagged again?" The old man's harsh tone was much more persuasive than gentle entreaties. Polly had not yet fully recovered from the fall walk on the river. The wounds on her face had healed, but in some places there were still visible pinkish scars. Most of all, she was concerned about the broken limbs. The girl had learned to move around the house on her own, but she was afraid to go outside without help. Noticing that after his reasoning Polly had completely slumped, the old man took pity. "If you want to get some fresh air, throw on my Tulu. Leo's waiting out there, he's bored alone." With the old man's help, Polly made her way to the porch and sat down there on the bench. The dog was twirling at her feet, trying to express his affection. Gabriel, too, crouched nearby. "It's too bad, Polly, that I have no clothes for the girl, but that's all right, Aiden will come soon and take you to the village." The girl cheered up. "Is that your grandson?" The old man twirled his mustache contentedly. "Yes, he is my hope and support. Here we have a habit of scolding young people, and I'm against it, because everything depends on upbringing. My son Elijah, no matter how much his mother resisted, would not call a stranger father. He also taught his son, that is, my grandson, to respect his elders. So I can only thank Aiden for his care, and there is nothing to scold him for." Gabriel even earlier showed a bad photo of her grandson. The boy was her age, but had already managed to try himself in different spheres. The old man said he was into private investigations at one time, and now he was working in programming. The old man confessed. "Though I am an educated man, I am far from this new technology, and you, Polly, do you understand it?" The girl laughed resoundingly. "These days even kindergarten kids are great at it, they're on AU with the most advanced devices. I also had to learn the basics of programming and other wisdom at university." Every time she thought back, Polly felt homesick. It was almost a physical sensation of losing something very important. "Gabriel, I want more than anything to go back to my old life." The old man sighed. "You know yourself that you can't go back to the past, your father is gone, and your husband and girlfriend, judging from your stories, have betrayed you. You will have to start all over again, but don't despair. Losses and blows of fate only harden us, and these are not pretty words, I know from my own experience." The old man thought again, and then revived. "I wanted to tell you, my grandson is not just coming, I asked him to help you untangle this tangle. You'll never be able to do it yourself. God forbid you get hurt. Gabriel, why tear the man down? Your grandson has his own things to do, and here I am, because we don't even know each other. You'll get to know him." Aiden showed up a couple of days after this conversation. Polly looked out the window in the morning out of habit and saw a stranger making his way to the house through the snowdrifts. "Gabriel, hurry up and get over here." The old man was fiddling by the stove and came running up at once. "What's wrong?" "Someone is coming toward us." "Look, isn't that your grandson?" The man only glanced up and immediately rushed to the door. Aiden, grandson. Why is he running on foot? Or did his car break down? The old man couldn't answer these questions yet, so he hurried toward his grandson, and the girl watched at the window as the young man in the sheepskin coat lifted the old man easily, and then gently lowered him to the ground. Gabriel threatened him with his fist, but his face brightened with happiness. From the threshold he began to introduce the girl to his grandson. There, grandson, not only princes of all kinds are lucky. Even though I'm very old, but what a beautiful girl I caught in the river has never been in my life. The young man got off his shoes at the threshold, and only then made his way into the house. He held out his hand to the girl. Let's meet, because my grandfather told me all the ears, all bragged about his discovery, so I decided to see with my own eyes what mermaids in our rivers are found. Polly embarrassed, but gave her hand. The young man took her confusion in his own way. Did I offend you with my jokes? No, you didn't. Then what's embarrassing you so much? My helplessness. I am more accustomed to an active life, but for more than 2 months now I have been forced to stay here. To be honest, it's still very uncomfortable to give Gabriel any trouble. Aiden made a puzzled expression on his face. I'll let you in on a very scary secret. My grandfather is afraid that one day you will leave him. Imagine an old man living alone in a dense forest. The guy suddenly came to his senses. I've been talking too much. I had to leave my car on the highway because you can't get through here. The girl asked. And how are you going to get your car out of the snow captivity? Just shovel in hand and go. Gabriel headed for the road with his grandson. The girl was left with a very pleasant impression of meeting the young man, but she carefully chased away extraneous thoughts. Only in the evening the men cleared the way to the old man's house, and in the evening again Polly retold the story of her family. Aiden listened to her without interrupting. Only after she had stopped talking did he ask. And you don't have any documents or pictures or anything that might help in the investigation? The girl shrugged. Alas, nothing. I don't even have a passport, so it turns out that I am a person of no fixed abode. I don't even know how I can prove that I am me. Don't worry about that. There are many methods of establishing parentage now, so there won't be any problems with that. But proving your spouse's guilt, I think, will be much harder, but we'll get through it. Suddenly, Polly remembered her father's last words. I don't know, Aiden, maybe it doesn't matter, but Dad told me before he died about some documents that are in the greenhouse. Now that's interesting. Tell me more, and better yet, if you can draw a plan of your house to include this very greenhouse. Polly drew diligently with her healthy hand on a sheet of school notebook a plan of a country cottage. She had a good visual memory and drew a fairly detailed diagram of the interior layout of the country cottage. The thought of having strangers in her house now burned her mind again. She handed the sheet to Aiden, and he praised her. And well done. Everything is clear. And even the proportions are right. Aiden looked at the plan for a long time, and then carefully rolled up the sheet and hid it in the inner pocket of her sheepskin coat. In the morning, even before dawn, grandson Gabriel went to Santa Clara. He decided that the right thing to do would be to start the investigation there. In the evening he had long been looking at the map of the area and making some calculations on a piece of paper. The young man came to the conclusion that the girl's body was thrown into the water somewhere within the boundaries of this provincial town. Aiden had been interested in everything mysterious since high school, and his parents considered his hobby unhealthy and lamented about it. You'd be better off doing something useful. Guys your age are into sports, at least sign up for a decent section. This was the kind of advice my father handed out, and my mother wanted her son to become a popular lawyer. She considered in-demand work to be a man's highest achievement, but she especially revered lawyers. Aiden a good lawyer, always honored, but in addition to respect she always needed a decent income. Arguing with his parents about his future was useless, so Aiden agreed with his mother and father, and pushed his own plans forward. He believed that a modern man should be well-developed and never tired of trying himself in different directions. Aiden traveled a lot, then was a private detective, but the guy was not going to stop there, because there was so much interesting in the world. The case of the girl with the beautiful name of Polly interested him immediately, and he decided to take up his investigation. With a little experience in detective work, he outlined a plan of action so that nothing prevented the fruitful work. The young man took his leave. The head of the department was genuinely surprised. "Aiden, where on earth are you going in the middle of winter?" "I promised my grandfather. We've been planning to go on a bear hunt for a long time." The boss even opened his mouth in surprise. "A live one?" "Well, yeah." When he later told the guys in the department how he had pranked the supervisor, everyone laughed. The laughter stopped when the offended supervisor barged in on them. Aiden, I didn't expect you. And yet you have such a famous last name. You think I do not know that bears hibernate in winter? If you lied to me about hunting, it's a pity I signed your application for leave." To justify himself, Aiden said, "Not all bears hibernate. Some walk through the woods. They are called crank bears, and they are very dangerous to humans." The warden calmed down a little. "You should have said so right away. You've got me confused. Go and rest, and have no adventures." The men couldn't settle down and continued to poke fun at me. "Aiden, you bring the warden the pelt of that particular crank." "No, I'd better introduce him to my grandfather. He'll be surprised for sure. Because my old man wears exactly the same black patch over one eye as the great general, his namesake." "Really, are you kidding?" Aiden had purposely done a nature photo shoot with his grandfather on his last visit, and now showed pictures of a relative at every opportunity, which caused as much amazement as the mythical bear hunt. About all this Aiden pondered cheerfully as he made his way to Santa Clara. It was getting late in the evening when he drove into this provincial town. He knew from detective movies and his past experience that the most valuable information could be obtained from the most vulnerable social group, namely, homeless people. He went around to several beer establishments and was advised to meet with Mr. Wilson. From his sonorous last name, Aiden realized that its owner was a man of authority. The informant warned, "It's no use looking for him during the day alone. He comes out of his hole by nightfall." Aiden knew from past experience that every gram of useful information was worth about a liter of hot liquid, which meant that interviewing all the witnesses would cost him a pretty penny, so he decided to limit his search to finding one Mr. Wilson. There were only 4 bridges in the town, so he was on the trail of Mr. Wilson fairly quickly. The wanted character was there, cooking something foul-smelling on a crumpled tile. Seeing the unfamiliar young man, Mr. Wilson was greatly frightened, but Aiden promptly pulled out from behind his sinus the most powerful anti-stress agent he could find. "Mr. Wilson, I'm here to see you on a very delicate matter." "Well, we can talk, since it's such an escort, otherwise I'm waiting for my comrades to show up. They've disappeared somewhere." Aiden bought plastic cups in advance and poured the drink himself. Mr. Wilson didn't wait for a special invitation and drank his glass at once. "Oh, I've had a headache all morning." "Ask your questions." "Yeah, I only have one question. Last fall around the end of October, did you see anything suspicious around here?" The bum got wary. Aiden realized he had hit the mark. Mr. Wilson was very nervous, and his hands began to shake. He pleaded, "Shall we have a little more to drink?" "Of course, whatever your wish." "So have you seen something here that's been bugging you?" Mr. Wilson doubted whether he should tell his secret to this strange guy. He had very different plans about the information the stranger was interested in. He had already made some investigations himself and knew the owner of the black SUV. Mr. Wilson was going to go into town one of these days and pound the rich man to the wall with the facts. In other words, the bum was going to make a good living. He looked at the bottle, then his gaze slid to Aiden's face. A thought flashed through his mind. What if he goes to the rich man himself? It was a risky business, and he resolutely filled another glass. I've seen things that still make my hair stand on end. It was not difficult to guess from the peculiarly dressed headdress that Mr. Wilson had baldness, but Aiden did not stress this point and took him at his word. All that remained was to find out the details. "Mr. Wilson, can you elaborate on what frightened you so much?" The landlord was already quite intoxicated. "I could, but I won't. Why not? Because I'll tell you, and then they'll come to me and kill me. Aiden filled the glass to the brim. Mr. Wilson greedily gulped down his saliva, but his thirst still overcame his fear, and he waved his hand. All right, I'll tell you what happened. It's very hard to carry the load. I have such nightmares. I don't even know who those 2 men killed. There were 2 of them? Well, yeah. One was giving commands and the other was fussing over him. When the first one left, the second dragged the load to the river. Anton, my buddy, and I heard the sack fall into the water. I even got the cross because I am an Orthodox man. The strong drink did its work and the heart of the battered man softened. Mr. Wilson even shed a few tears and laid it all out for the guest, without even asking who he was or where he was from. At the end of his story, the homeless man bragged. I remembered the number of the car in which the corpse was brought, and then I found this card with a beautiful girl. I'll show you. I just need to find her. Mr. Wilson searched his pockets for 5 minutes until he found a business card of the fitness club. Zaria, see, what is it? And how she smiles. Aiden gave the homeless man a critical look. He was already fully immersed in his soapy fantasies, and Aiden realized that he would get no more useful information, so he hurriedly bid farewell to the owner of the den. But Mr. Wilson was not going to let his guest go so easily. Comrade. Aiden found some change in his pocket and slipped it into the satisfied bum's hand. Here, there's enough for 1 more bottle. Aiden hurried to the car, followed by the upbeat song, Pour It On, Friend, Don't Spare It. Let's drink to love with you, young man. In the afternoon, having booked a hotel room to spend the night in comfort, Aiden went back to the house without being fully informed. In the morning, he decided to head into town to ascertain the identity of the car's owner. Aiden had useful acquaintances in various agencies, had connections with the police, and a good buddy had slipped him information about the owner of the car. Aiden fiddled with a notepad on which he wrote down everything he could find out. I wonder who you are, Mr. Robert. Nothing. I will dig up all the information about you. I know your place of residence. All that remains is to visit you. The investigation, which began so successfully, soon ended, because there were many mysteries in the personality of the owner of the SUV with beautiful license plates. Aiden decided not to hurry, so as not to frighten Robert with careless actions. On the second day, by evening, he returned to the farmstead, where Gabriel and Polly were waiting impatiently for him. The young man threw up his hands. I have nothing to please you yet. But the main discovery, I am sure, lies ahead of us. The old man inquired. And what is the question? That you didn't follow through? Grandfather, you as a military man should understand that you can't act abruptly. I wanted to report to this Robert at his address, but something stopped me. Gabriel nodded understandingly and corrected. Intuition worked, a very useful thing. People in special professions can't do without it. There were times when me and my guys would go on a mission and my intuition would. Aiden understood that if the grandfather began to remember, he would not stop until the evening and gently returned the conversation to the old track. There's a lot of incomprehensibility in this case. I especially don't like the personality of your husband. Polly, that man is very mysterious. Robert came out of nowhere. I tried to look for him in different databases, but so far without results. I'll see what else I can get through my contacts. Polly was immersed in her thoughts, and suddenly the expression on her face changed. Aiden, maybe I can help with the investigation? After all, every little thing counts, and it's often the little things that decide the outcome of an investigation. Do you remember I told you that my father, before he died, told you about some documents hidden in the greenhouse? Of course I remember. You also drew me a plan of the house in detail, but how to get into this conservatory of yours? I know how. There's a secret passage my father and I invented it when the house was still under construction. There was a kind of alcove. The builders wanted to fill it with concrete, but my father wouldn't let me. You can get into the greenhouse through this passage or through the garage, and the garage is connected to the cellar. But Robert is hardly aware of these planning tricks. He's never been interested in such things. What you just said is of great value, but how do you get to the house? You yourself understand that it is almost impossible at this stage. If only because without you I have nothing to go there, and you, to my great regret, are not yet in the right shape to take part in life-threatening activities. The girl tried to dissuade the assistant. I can walk quite well already. Given that you have a car, I won't have to travel long distances on foot. The only problem is that I have nothing to wear. Well, that's fixable. You and I will go to the village tomorrow and buy something there. Gabriel decided it was time for him to step in. I'll give the money, I have nothing to spend it on, so I've been saving for a rainy day. Polly began to object. Gabriel, but I can't. I'm already more trouble than I'm worth. Aiden interrupted the girl. Polly, it's better not to argue with my grandfather, especially since he's right, since you don't have your passport or bank card with you. That's right, I keep forgetting what position I'm in. That's all right, it'll be all right soon, I guarantee it. Yes, I almost forgot, in the course of the investigation I had to talk to a very colorful character who gave me this card. The young man held out the card of the fitness club, Zaria, for the month of October. The girl carefully took the card in her hands, and Aiden noticed her hands shaking. This is my membership card. It all happened after I came back from the club in the evening. I asked for tea, and Jennifer brought it to me, and then it all disappeared, as if it had dissolved. I just remember the pebbles rustling under my feet and Robert talking to someone. The second person's voice sounded very familiar, and now I knew for sure it was Logan, Jennifer's brother. He's an instructor at Zara. Aiden, does it look like all three of them were in cahoots? It turns out they did. The girl cried. I don't understand what I did wrong to all of them. Why did they do this to me? Money is to blame, money, my dear. That motive is indicated by everything you've told me here. No offense, Polly, I have a suspicion that your Robert married you for money, though another motive is not excluded. I'm sure you need to look for the end of this thread in your house. In the morning, Aiden and Polly drove to the village where the girl had lived happily and carefree for many years. On the way they stopped at a mall, because the girl wanted to look their suitable clothes for herself. In the village store the assortment was not too varied, and Polly was used to dress tastefully. Robert lay on the sofa upholstered in natural leather and daydreamed. In recent months he had often indulged in this pleasant occupation, he was annoyed only by the fact that time flowed too slowly. After the death of his beloved wife, he appeared in public with a mournful expression, but at home immediately removed the mask. Robert couldn't wait until the 6 months were up and he could legally become the owner of Adam's company, and all the rest of the businessman's movable and immovable property. The man was relieved by his sense of pride, and he said aloud, Father, I've done my duty, you can sleep well in the other world. The habit of talking to himself did not appear to him long ago. Robert attributed this peculiarity to his experiences. Jennifer had admonished him more than once. Robert, you worry me. When a man talks to himself, it means he's not right in the head. How do you know? Don't forget I'm a registered nurse. You shouldn't worry, Jennifer. I've had a very sensitive nature since childhood, so I sometimes say things out loud, but that doesn't mean I'm out of my mind. I'm a good judge of what's going on. Remembering the time, he looked at his watch. Jennifer had gone into town and should have been back by now. He dialed her number. Jennifer, where have you been? I miss you wildly. The woman shouted into the phone that she was at the mall and would be here soon. Jennifer really liked Robert. He had always dreamed of such a woman and didn't resist her attempts to twist him into a love affair with his wife's girlfriend. He rushed in like a whirlpool, not thinking about the possible consequences, but when they were seen at the scene by the now deceased Lucas, fear settled somewhere, and that fear grew larger every day. It reached critical mass the day Polly told him she was expecting a child. This news should have made the man happy, but Robert was in a panic, because a pregnant wife ruined all their plans. He knew that Jennifer dreamed of taking Polly's place, but he let her hope for now because he needed an accomplice. Jennifer was resourceful, he wouldn't have managed the unpleasant mission of eliminating the Addams family alone, but if things worked out spontaneously with Lucas, things were more complicated with Polly. And then Jennifer suggested, My friend always drinks herbal tea after working out at the club. Robert didn't understand what his mistress was getting at and what that implied. You could slip a powerful sleeping pill or something else into the drink. She would fall asleep soundly and for a long time. I have one very powerful drug. Jennifer, your initiatives scare me. One day you might send me to my folks, too. The woman laughed, but her laugh was unpleasant. Robert, I really need you, so I'll keep you safe for now, and don't forget that you promised to marry me after observing mourning. When one is alive, healthy just annoys me, even so, but I'm not the one who's been hatching a plan of revenge for years. Although, Polly and her mother I've hated since 5th grade. Don't you worry, Polly will come out clean, the drug disintegrates quickly and no forensics will detect it. I still don't understand your plan. Robert shouted because his mistress' reasoning was increasingly annoying to him, especially pissed off by her calmness, but Jennifer knew how to manipulate this weak man. She raised her voice, too. What are you yelling at me for? For the stupid, I'll explain again. Polly will drink her tea and go to sleep. In about 15 minutes, if she's even conscious, she won't be able to move, and you'll take her out in the meantime. It is better to throw her into the river from the bridge, so they think that she did it herself. Now do you understand? I see, but I can't do that. Oh, no, I can't. I'm shaking inside right now. Jennifer looked at her lover with disdain. Coward, she disappeared, but soon returned. I asked my brother to do it right. The events of that fateful evening were almost completely erased from Robert's memory. Jennifer commanded the operation and everything went off without complications. Only the river had a hitch and he asked Logan to see it through. 3 days later, Robert went to the police to report his wife missing. Then he and Jennifer identified Polly as some nameless corpse. Every week the widower visits his beloved wife's grave. Today he was going to go to the cemetery, too. Well, where has she gone? I forgot to tell her to buy flowers. He dialed his mistress' number again, but she didn't answer. A minute later, her car pulled up at speed in front of the house. Robert even became indignant and hurried to tell her his displeasure, but when he saw the woman's pale face, he immediately changed his mind. Jennifer, is something wrong? It's happened. Robert, I may be having a nervous hallucination, but I saw Polly quite clearly, you know? Alive and well, Polly. Your wife, who died 4 months ago. The man's mouth became dry with excitement. Jennifer, you know yourself that it can't be. You just imagined it, maybe the girl just looked like Polly. Jennifer collapsed on the soft poof. I really wish it was. Robert, you can't imagine the horror I experienced. Of course I should have followed that woman, but That's right. I'd be shocked too if I were you, but it's best not to take it personally. Think soberly, such an option is impossible. She was dead, not even a pulse. By the way, I have a visit to my wife's grave tonight. Robert winked cheerfully at his mistress. Don't you want to keep me company? No, and why? I've explained it to you 100 times before. It's indecent. You don't need to show up with me in public. But you have a right to grieve, too. Polly was your best friend. Robert, please don't start. You know very well how I feel about Polly. While you do your duty as a widower, I will rest a little. There was silence in the cemetery. Robert calmed down a little and walked leisurely toward his wife's resting place. He stood beside the mound in mournful silence for a few minutes, as was his custom, and then laid flowers. The man was about to leave when he was called out. Mr. Good, take your time. Robert turned around. There was a tramp standing in front of him, smiling defiantly. The man thought the type wanted to ask him for a drink and squeaked squeamishly. I don't have any change, I pay by card. Go away. The bum exclaimed enthusiastically. Just like a real guy, all I can do is bow down. No, honey, you can't hide, because I know something about your sins. Robert staggered. What kind of nonsense are you talking? I'll ask you to keep your language to yourself. And as for your unenviable social position, no one is safe from jail. It's possible that tomorrow you yourself will be without a place to live in order to feed yourself. Robert had had enough of this verbal duel and moved forward with confidence, but an unkempt man with a strange headdress blocked the narrow passage. No, you wait, hear me out. Robert realized he couldn't get rid of the tramp that easily. Tell me what you want. The man in the ridiculous hat rolled his eyes. I think $1 million is enough. Go home and sleep it off, weirdo, here's a bottle for you. Go away. Robert pulled out some change, but the bum hid his hands behind his back. No, you won't get off with change. I've got so much dirt on you, you're looking at 10 years in juvie for sure. Only now did Robert realize that this guy wasn't kidding. His insides went cold, and the bum went on. By the way, I had a young one come to me the other day, a very fast one. He wanted to know if I'd seen any oddities in the fall of October on the lot I was in charge of. Are you familiar with Santa Clara? That's where I'm from, I live right under the big bridge. He wanted to run away, not to see or hear this unpleasant man. He understood everything and did not know what to do next. While the bum was gibbering, anticipating a substantial sum of money, Robert was thinking intensely. Finally, he got his thoughts together and realized what he had to do. In an affectionate voice, he said to the man, I told you I don't have any cash at the moment. All the money is on the card. Mr. Wilson didn't back down. You think you can fool me? No can do, let's go together. I'm not giving you anything, and I don't have the damn $1 million. Mr. Wilson said disappointedly. You look so rich, but you don't have any money. Then I'll have to report it to the police. I saw with my own eyes how you and another man brought the sack in, and then dumped it in the river. Robert took a swing at the bum, but the man put his hands forward warningly. You won't make it, because Anton saw the whole thing, too. So will you give me $1 million? Robert said doomfully. Yes, but not now, tonight. Come to my house, you know where I live? Mr. Wilson grinned contentedly. Why, I have all the information written down right here, he touched his head, just watch out, don't try to trick me, because I'll go straight to the police. While Robert was assessing the degree of risk from the threat of the bum, Mr. Wilson got lost between the monuments. With mingled feelings of fear and hopelessness, the man drove home. When he saw Jennifer resting on the same couch he had previously dreamed of, he lashed out at his mistress with rebukes. And how are you resting? Doesn't anything torment you? The woman reached out leisurely. Robert, what's the matter with you? You're furious. You convinced me that your brother could be trusted, that he was a master of his craft. But it turns out that a homeless man saw the whole thing and is now threatening to report it to the police. Do you realize what you and I are facing for this? Jennifer realized that the case smelled like kerosene. She didn't say anything to her lover or even reassure him. Grabbing a healthy bag, she headed for the door. The man grabbed her by the arm. No, wait, take your time. Are you planning to run away? It won't work, we'll answer together if anything. Jennifer began to lash out. Let go. I'm not going anywhere, I just want to warn Logan. I think this bum better give the money away. Maybe it'll still work out, and we're making waves early. Jennifer left, and he realized she wasn't coming back. He had nowhere to go himself. Somewhere in the back of his mind there was still hope that things would eventually calm down, and that he shouldn't fall for the bum's threats. No one would believe him anyway. Fatigue and nervous tension did their job, and Robert did not notice how he fell asleep. He woke up to a strange noise, a sound that sounded like the rustling or whispering of a man. The man jumped up from the couch. I personally checked all the locks myself back in the fall. No one can just break into this house. Indeed, businessman Adam's homestead was secure, but Robert hadn't considered that the former owners had thoughtfully created several secrets during construction that he couldn't have known about. Neither was the mistress aware. When the noise was repeated, the man tiptoed down the corridor. He approached the glass door that covered the entrance to the greenhouse, and the next moment the hair on his head stood on end, because Polly was looking at him through the glass on the other side. A scream of horror burst from the man's chest, and behind the glass his late wife was screaming something. The man collapsed unconscious on the floor. Everything was going according to plan, and Aiden and Polly were getting ready to begin the last phase. They saw Robert return from the cemetery, and soon Jennifer came flying out of the house with a bag. Aiden was even amused by this picture. It's just like in the movies, the spiders are running around, how they haven't chewed each other out yet. Okay, let's wait another half hour and go. Polly said hopefully. I hope we won't be disturbed by anyone else. They had barely had time to get out of the car when a little man in a ridiculous hat appeared outside the house. The young man was at once surprised. All familiar faces. Aiden, do you know this man? Had the good fortune to meet Santa Clara's elite bum the other day. He has a beautiful name, Mr. Wilson. He also has friends with similarly impressive nicknames, though I don't remember them. If I understand you correctly, this man saw me dash. The young man gave the girl a friendly pat on the shoulder. You'd better not remember that horror. And please don't call me you, it's silly, because we're the same age. The girl agreed. Probably stupid. It's just that in the last few days things have gotten so twisted that I haven't had time to come to my senses. The events unfolded in escalating fashion. Mr. Wilson walked around the house for another hour or so, but never waited for the promised million. With swearing and cursing at the bourgeois, he headed down the street. At least give it to me for a bottle. I won't let him off that easy anyway. He'll pay me 10 times as much for moral damages. Aiden laughed. What a guy, he's going to get more for moral damages. You could pay him back for a drink. Can't be declassified on him now. Polly led her partner through the wicket in the backyard. From there they walked to the gazebo that stood close to the garage. The girl searched the wall and a secret passage leading into the garage opened. Aiden couldn't stop wondering. Yes, clever what you've been up to here. I naively assumed today that modern structures are built without hidden doors. The girl whispered. That's not all the mystery, there's also a surprise in the greenhouse. Polly wasn't lying. When she rushed to the tub of a tropical plant and asked for help, the young man at first thought there was a treasure hidden under the plant. He even joked about it. I never get tired of being amazed, it's just like in the movies. Your father must have been very fond of detectives? No, Dad didn't like to read, and he didn't have time. He spent all his time on his company, which was his favorite thing. Even I was in second place, and the tub was a safe. Dad kept all the most important things there. I'm sure we'll find all the clues here. They were about to leave the greenhouse just as quietly and discreetly when Robert's silhouette appeared in the door glass. Polly flinched. What shall we do? It's my husband. The man on the other side was pounding against the glass and screaming. An unknown force spurred Polly on, and she, forgetting her limp, ran to the door and began pounding on it, too. The girl saw Robert faint. Aiden commented. Is it really the end for him? We should give our comrade first aid, don't you think? I guess we should, but I can't get the damn door open. They must have changed the lock. Let's try to fix it now. Is there an alarm in the house? Yeah, that's right. How did I not think of that right away? Before we had the goal to get in unnoticed, and now we have to give ourselves away in some way. Time it. Why? And now you and I are going to check on the emergency services. The ambulance showed up in 2 minutes. The little son was peacefully snoozing in his crib, and Polly kept singing a lullaby. Even in the morning she had prepared soup and chops for the second course. The young woman thought about the fact that her parents had not taught her everything. They had forgotten that any hostess should know how to cook. The first time she took on cooking, Aiden at first didn't understand the danger of it. For this he paid the price during dinner. He had to pretend that the food was very good. Polly always thought warmly of her rescuers. Gabriel had saved her from imminent death. Aiden, his grandson, had made her live on. The young woman's thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of her cell phone, and she shouted impatiently into the receiver. Aiden, how long must I wait for you, for we had agreed to visit grandfather today. Gabriel waited and fell asleep. Hurry up. Polly did not like to remember the events of the past year. The wounds in her heart were not yet healed, and she often dreamed of her parents at night. Robert was apprehended at once on the spot. It took him a long time to believe that his evil scheme had failed. Jennifer and her brother were in a much more difficult situation. They had been detained in another region of the country. Polly could not understand what she was feeling. On the one hand, she felt pity for the people involved, but on the other, she wanted to see justice done. Robert, through a lawyer, begged to see her, but she refused to see him. Then he threatened her that he would tell his son when he grew up. Polly asked the lawyer to tell her ex-spouse that she had a child with another man. I don't want my son to repeat the path of this essentially miserable man. Polly had no idea that Lucas kept a diary of sorts. He recorded all the most important events. Thanks to his meticulousness, the whole truth was revealed. As the prosecutor read out excerpts from this documentary evidence during the trial, Robert banged his head against the bars of the cage, behind which he sat, and screamed in a way that gave everyone in the room the creeps. Father, how could you do this to me? It was you who planted the seed of hatred in me and ruined my life. Robert's mother did not appear until the last hearing, when the sentence was read. He was sentenced to 12 years on the basis of his cumulative atrocities. He was sent to the same penal colony where his father had been incarcerated, so one could say that the circle was closed. After the successful conclusion of the case, Aiden immediately expressed a desire to continue his acquaintance with Polly. Several times he visited her. One day he stopped by to ask a favor. Polly, Grandpa is sick and needs you. She was already 8 months pregnant, but immediately packed for the road. Gabriel was very excited to see her. And I didn't think I'd ever see my mermaid again. Aiden realized that Grandpa was being sly. Look, Grandpa, tell us straight out, why did you call us? The old man was embarrassed, began to avert his eyes to the side. Forgive me, old fool, but I so want you to get married. I know I'm talking nonsense, but I've always dreamed of waiting for a great-grandson, and this is precisely the case. The request was so unexpected that Polly did not know what to say. Aiden was perfectly calm about Gabriel's whim. All right, grandfather, Polly and I will think about it. Just think fast, or I might die early. And be sure Gabriel named the baby after me. Grandfather, you will not die of modesty. She heard familiar footsteps and Polly cautiously stepped out into the hallway. She opened the door and was immediately embraced by her husband. Am I too late? Too late. I'm tired of waiting for you and I worry about you all the time. Look, Aiden, maybe we can get Gabriel to talk? What are you talking about now? Oh, his relocation? Well, yes, we can try, of course, but I'm sure you and I will get a rejection. The young woman sighed heavily. But that's impossible too, we're here and he's there. What if something happens? The man is elderly. All the way they were silent. Each was busy with his own thoughts. Only little Gabriel babbled merrily. They had already reached the road to the former miller's homestead, when suddenly Aiden shouted. Polly, look who's meeting us. Gabriel was walking along the road, followed by Leo, as usual. The old man looked disgruntled at the arrivals. Where have you gone? I'm tired of waiting for you, and Leo is nervous, too. Already wanted to take things back. Aiden got out of the car. Grandpa, what things? Where to, if it's not a secret? What are you making yourself out to be? They asked me to move 100 times a day themselves, and when it came to doing it, they pretend they don't understand a thing. Want, be offended, or not, but I cannot leave my great-grandson on you, I will bring up myself. Aiden and Polly looked at each other, but only smiled, and little Gabriel was already proudly sitting in the arms of the great-grandfather.
An amazing story, isn't it? Thank you for listening till the end. I sincerely hope that you truly enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate this video. See you in the comments and in new releases.